So get this out of the way. And so sitting comfortably, and my usual routine to start, first of all, rubbing your hands together and then tapping gently over your face. Covering as much of your face as you can. Obviously be careful, you know, if you've got any sore spots or anything like that, then don't tap over those. Over your head and neck. I generally use both hands, but you could just use one hand. That's more comfortable for you. Just swap over every now and then over on the shoulder and your arm. On the side. This can both freshen you up and make a little bit more sort of sense of focus being in your body, upper part of your chest. Your belly. And finally your legs. Good. So we want to feel alert and awake. But as we sit back, we realize we don't want that to be a kind of like frenetic buzz. We want alongside that, or sort of like balancing that, this sense of stillness and quietness and the physical routine that is associated with that. So at the start of the class, we're sort of going through these different aspects of Tai Chi, that what we want in the long run is for them all to be present and for them to kind of blend and reinforce each other. But always, you know, particularly at the start of a session, at the start of the day, just sort of going over these things, reminding you of these individual qualities is always a useful exercise. We can see some of the relationship between, on the one hand, this stillness, and on the other hand, this vibrancy in our breathing. Because as our weight settles back and there's less stiffness, less tightness in the front part of the body, it may just feel a smoother, more fluid quality to your breath. And then you bring your feet in. So the blending of those things is not a deliberate, I'm now going to blend them. It's just having those qualities there within your practice. And I always think it's a bit like cooking something. You prepare the ingredients, you do whatever you need to do, and then you put them in the pot or the pan or whatever, and then you just let them blend together. You let the flavors blend and so on and so forth. So now we want to try and find some of that quality of stillness in the upright position, but also at the same time, particularly in the upper part of the body, with that clearing away of tightness and stiffness, maybe an awareness of the breathing, the freshness of your breath, some of that kind of vibrant quality as well. And then just begin to focus your attention on movement, starting with your head and your neck, nice and easy and gently, nice and smooth. aware in the back of your mind of the feeling of your weight sinking down through your hips, your buttocks, sinking into the chair, a little bit in your legs, very subtle in your legs. That's a sort of background to the movement. And then the shoulders, the familiarity with these opening movements can enable a deeper sense of focusing, and that both tells you more about what's going on in your body, how you're making the movement, how you might change the movement if that's appropriate going forward now. But also really reinforces this quality of stillness. The more you can focus your attention, the more precisely you can focus your attention, the sort of deeper that quieter, calmer quality begins to feel. Hands out to your sides. So palms forwards and then around. And most of your weight back in your hips. Feels the weight of your head doesn't exist because it's flowing downwards through the middle of your body. Well, I would say sometimes it feels as though your head is floating up because we don't have to make the same sort of effort to keep our head up high. And then winding around. So the awareness of your posture, the alignment of your hips, your shoulders, where your feet are, and so on and so forth, helps to create a physical posture that reflects the sort of calmer, softer quality of your mind. Because holding our head up is actually quite difficult. Our heads are quite heavy. If we get the posture correct, we don't need to do that. Back the other way. Rest your hands. Looking forwards. Learning to distinguish between the different parts of your body where you're feeling this pressure, the gentle pressure of your weight. The moment, it's fairly straightforward. It's between your feet, front half of your feet, and again, hips and buttocks. When we turn towards one knee, then there's another subtler distinction, which is between one leg and another. So here, when I'm forward, I feel most of the weight in this leg, but still a little bit in that foot. And you might even want to do this so that you go from this foot back to this hip. So you're very much on a diagonal line. That's comfortable for you. and then you turn the other way. So we distinguish these qualities of full and empty between feet and hips, between one side of the body and another. This is another quality of awareness that we want to be able to enact without having to deliberately focus on it when we come to more complex movements. And in fact, not even just the more complex movements, but as we start to go around in a circle here, feel the change from full to empty. You might even find that by focusing on that, on producing that change, full in your right hip, full in your right foot, full in your left foot, and however you sort of feel it, whichever direction you're going in, that actually that awareness of the change from full to empty begins to drive the movement. Remembering that our minds, in some senses, can be said to sort of lead the body. And then back in the other direction. Coming back to the center, putting one knee up. And as you do, you'll feel a slight shift in the weight. You have to, because you're losing one of the principal supports here. So you'll find in time that this awareness is something that is carried with you. Again, I've described, things like, your shoelaces are done up and so on and so forth. We find that we're aware of them in the movements that we do, and those of you doing the forms and things like that, change sides now, you notice them in the form. And we notice them in our daily lives, or at least we're using them in our daily lives. Many years ago, I was in a training day for exercise instructors, training around issues of stability and balance, and the guy leading the workshop was saying that a new development at that point in physiotherapy and in force and balance training was that they were starting to distinguish between what they refer to as a weight shift and a weight transfer. And the weight shift is random. You could go anywhere. If your weight shifts, it's like when if a lorry is going along and its weight shifts, the lorry can crash, and your weight just shifts, it can pull you over. But a transfer is something that you're much more aware of, and of course it's something that physiotherapy has taken from Tai Chi. So if that's an issue for you, then the things that I'm saying about the way that we practice these very simple exercises are really important to practice. And once again, your hands down by your sides and easing forwards. So I mean, we could spend much longer on those processes and transfer, but see if you can just feel them while you're doing the other exercises, because that's really where Tai Chi becomes a very practical art. It encourages a subconscious awareness of some really vital elements to do with posture, movement, how we move, how we can move in a way that is conducive to our well-being rather than one that encourages us to strain. But we want that to become integrated into our overall movement and into our daily lives. So this is the blending of the flavors in cooking. But can you feel the change from full to empty in your hips and feet while you're doing this exercise? And then fisherman cast a net. Now, imagine rolling the ball in. Pigeon spread its wings. Soften your shoulders, your elbows. And forwards, as though you still have the ball there and you're sort of pushing into, leaning on and pressing the ball, and just let the ball expand and push you back. Pushing a wave, pushing the boat. Another aspect that we want to have all the way through as much as possible is this image of being in water, or somehow or another of resistance. Notice the effect that has on your quality of movement. Excuse me. Your body will naturally flow when you take away the things that stop that, poor posture and so on and so forth. When you give it a reason to flow, hence the image of moving through water. And eventually that will just become as natural to you in response to your own mind, your own rhythms, and so on and so forth, as tapping your foot is when you hear your a favourite piece of music come up on the radio. And then on through both hands. Trying to be as precise in your movements as possible to reinforce this very kind of deep precision of mind. So for instance, with this one, keep going, I'll show you one hand there. See where my elbow is? It hasn't come to here, it's there. As I go forward, my hand turns and it stops here. My elbow's still loose, not this. See how my shoulders come up. You want to try, and this is, I wouldn't be able to do this, I don't suppose, but you want to try as much as you can for your hands to arrive at exactly the same point in front of you each time. One more time. And back to vision spreads its wings in this three-part sequence. The pace of the movement, speed that your arms are going at, the range of movement, how far your arms are going, is dictated to your arms by the movements in the rest of your body, most particularly the movement of your weight. When your weight stops moving forwards, your arms stop moving forwards, and so on. One more round. Now, what you might find is that after a while, a certain amount of momentum builds up in your arms, and they just naturally continue to move a little bit after your weight has stopped. Sun changing. If that happens, that's fine, but you should be aware of your movement in your arms slowing down from the moment that your weight stops moving. So if I get to here and my weight stops moving, my arms may move a little bit, but they gradually get slower from that point. If they don't, then either consciously or unconsciously, you're contriving to move your arms. Let's do one more of these. Same thing here. Very, very subtle. Feel your head dropping down, your back compressing, begin to push up. Let me just see my shoulders moving a little bit. And as soon as the shoulders stop, the hands start to slow down and my shoulders start to drop before my hands move down. Now, in fact, if you can apply the image of moving through water, that's what would happen. Imagine being in a swimming pool and having a ball underneath your arms. And if you wanted to push the ball down into the water, first of all, you'd let your body drop and your arms will follow. You have to strain a lot to use your arms alone, push the ball down into water. One more time. And the wild goose. And then this time going into parting the clouds. Dragon plucks the stars from the sky. And now pushing in two directions. Try and feel the expansion from here. So this was the center, like a balloon expanding, pushing up, pushing out, pushing down. So when we feel that expansion in the belly, not only do we feel the arms extending, but really just slightly before that happens, a split second, we feel that increase the pressure in our hips, buttocks, and feet, soles of the feet. So I'm turning to pushing in four directions. Now the only addition that we've made is just that simple turn from the center of the body. That should be enough to redirect our arms, as long as everything else remains the same, the expansion, so on, I was just describing. It's the last time. Doing the expansion, pushing out to the side, and then one leg extending. Remember that line of the transfer of the weight, just a little bit of extra weight, maybe 10% extra in your heel, most of your weight staying back, and you come right back in to your hip, extend out. So now you get that lengthening in your back. Very gentle. It's akin to the lengthening that we feel in the vertical movements. And then, grasping the tiger's ears, you sit back, you go forwards in the same way you angle, and you feel that same lengthening, but this time diagonally or at an angle upwards. And that brings your hands over. Like you're using your hips to push your head up, and your arms just naturally follow. But make sure you're not holding your shoulders, your elbows, your wrists, or your fingers tight. If you get everything correct, then it should be no problem for your arms to swing around in this sort of half circle because they're attached to your shoulder. Switch sides. And then change. Good. Bring your feet back in line. Your hands drop to sides, move forwards and turn. So now your weight going towards this leg. If you're mirroring, that will be your left leg. Hitting the ball in front of the shoulder. Back into your right hip, over into the left. So this one goes diagonally across the body. Right hip to left foot, left hip to right foot. That's very, very subtle though. I mean, when I say to the right hip, that right side of your body or left side of the body, it's the hip, lower back, buttocks, that kind of area. It's really a difference, only of something like 10%. It's very difficult to pick up. You wouldn't want to make it more than that. Although you might want to exaggerate and move over, but you can see actually what I've done there is throwing my posture out. So again, these are very subtle distinctions. But hopefully you've got a sense of that, because we're going to change it now. We're going to do it the other way around. Let your hands drop down, and this time we're going to go forwards into this foot, the left foot, but it's the left arm that's going to go forward. We're going to turn the opposite way, and that leads us into Wind Blows the Willows. Now we're coming back towards the centre and over towards the other side. So somebody looking a bit puzzled, and your result, your response to looking a bit puzzled was actually to try and figure out what you did with your arms. I didn't mention your arms. I was talking about where your weight was, where your center was facing. So you want to get into the habit of always sort of, in a sense, analyzing the movement from the ground upwards. Literally, that has an effect of grounding your attention. And again, it's that it allows for that vibrancy without a kind of sense of being manic and frenetic. And so that's, again, you know, this quality of stillness within the movement. Now, if it's comfortable for you, don't strain in your legs, but just raise the other foot up, either straight up or with that little turn. Dragonfly skims the water. Don't do too many of these because it's quite strong. You don't want to strain. Don't lift your hands too high. Some of you seem to have your hands coming above your shoulders, which they don't do. And again, that means that you'll be straining in your shoulders, and that will make it more difficult to move your arms. Move your legs, I beg your arms as well, but I was thinking of your legs. So do one more on each side. And then hold your hands over your chest and the archer. Still your weight sinking down. You don't want to stiffen up in your upper back, the shoulders, or your neck. You've got feeling the weight of your head flowing down through the middle of your body, the hips, buttocks, legs, feet, into the ground. One more time on each side. And then rubbing your hands together. Face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder. And your arm. The other side. Upper part of your chest. And belly. And then your legs. Stand. Make forwards. Feel your hips dropping back. Settling down. Now again, I often describe this movement from the legs. Talk about the springiness in the legs, and that's a useful way of looking at it. But in the chair, I talked about this idea of a compression here in the belly and the hips. And if you think about that here, the ball's getting compressed, and then the ball will expand, and it will push your feet down into the ground, push your hips up. So it's again, a useful point of focus here. There's no one way of describing these movements, no one way of describing what goes on that gives you the full picture. You just practicing with a different awareness, you think of different things, and then eventually you just practice and it happens. Now change into the wild goose. And part in the clouds. One more time. Give it an extra shake. if we practice in this way, we focus on certain aspects of it, then eventually it all becomes quite intuitive. There's lots of things that we do like that, of course. I mentioned cooking earlier, and some of us, when we cook, we have to think carefully about how much of this do I do, how much flour do I need, and so on and so forth. Really good cooks don't need to, they just do it, don't they? They kind of know. They know when it's ready and so on. So now, one foot forwards. Transferring your weight. So one thing that we always want to be aware of is that too much emphasis on moving our arms, that classic question in Tai Chi, what do our arms do, actually moves you away from that more intuitive element. It actually makes it harder in the end for the arms to be correct, because it means that you've lost that focus of attention on your whole body and on movement in your body, your weight, the distinction between full and empty, the angle of your center, and so on and so forth. There's a kind of gap there, and so you have to contrive with the arms. A great exercise for countering that is to just have your hands out in front of you here, carrying the tray of drinks or pushing the supermarket trolley. The side you can see again, the arms really are, in one sense, they're quite passive. It's difficult to describe. They're not actually doing anything independent. They're not doing this. On the other hand, there's a very strong purpose there, a very distinct purpose. And that combination gives us this very distinctive quality of movement in our arms. Raising your toes and your heel. So when we do this, when we begin to move the empty leg, we don't want to spill the drinks. And then you step. Make sure you take time to really settle in each leg. If you're finding that each time you do this, you're kind of doing that, sink down. Good, and then on the other side. So first of all, drop your hands down, give your arms a rest, so you can focus on what's happening in your feet, distinguishing between full and empty. Or a direct translation, a more direct translation of the Chinese terms, by the way, would be substantial and insubstantial. When my weight is back, the back leg is substantial, this is insubstantial. And then it changes. And this then extends into the rest of the body with this sense of the flow of the energy. And now we can hold the arms out, we can feel this. Raising your toes and your heel. Step in, make sure your shoulders aren't tight, fingers and thumb quite soft, spread out just a little bit. And then just taking a few steps forwards or backwards, depending on where you have the space. Change direction if you haven't done so already. Okay, and drop your hands down. If you haven't already, try and have your right foot forwards at this point. Fisherman cast net. So mirror my movements. Remember that still quality in your arms. It's a bit difficult to see. Some of you seem to be doing this. You're getting to here and you're doing this. It doesn't do that. As you roll the ball along the ground. Somebody once said this reminded her of bowling. And then sink back and just go into your back leg, turn the opposite way, wind blows the willows. Stepping in, still with that quality of movement that you found with the idea of carrying the tray of drinks. If you're feeling ambitious, and you're comfortable with this, you can try just raising the leg. If that throws you off, if you start finding yourself wobbling around, don't do it, but practice raising your leg on its own, and then eventually that will work for you. And then on the other side, so fisherman cast the net. Wind blows the willows. Step in. With or without the raising of the foot, so go carefully. You could just do this, raise the foot up if you wanted to do it like that. Or again, slightly stronger, raise the foot and you rotate. So you're just kicking a ball up with the inside of your foot. And then, depending on where you've got the space either going forwards or backwards. If you're going forward, start in the front leg and step forwards. If you're going backwards, start in the back leg and step back. Dragonfly skims the water. Softly, as though you're carrying a tray of drinks still. Just use whatever space you've got. I'm going to go back now, otherwise I'm going to end up hitting the computer. Take your time with the step. Keep your head level. Don't look down because you'll end up falling over. Feel where your feet are going. And bring your feet parallel. Okay, shake out. Go back to your chairs. With the step in, it's very tempting to kind of watch your feet. Don't. Two reasons. One is you don't want to get into the habit of only being able to step when you can see your feet. What if it's dark? Or what if you're walking down the road? You walk down the road like this. You'll bump into things, won't you? So you want to be able to feel where the foot is going. Another thing is, don't say when I go to do this, I don't want to do this, because can you see what's happening? It's throwing my posture out. When our head goes somewhere, our body tends to follow. So if you're looking down, down is where you'll go. Yeah. So when we do something like Dragonfly skims the water, I want to go to here. I'm looking out that way. Put the foot down. I go forwards. I'm not going, oh, what's going on here? Because then that's going to happen. I'm looking at, but I can feel what's going on in the soles of my feet and so on and so forth. Again, that element of awareness, if you want to think of it like that, so important. So coming back to sitting, once again, hands down by your sides. Feel the rise and fall of your breathing in your belly. Feel, you've got about 2/3 of your weight back in hips, about 1/3 in your feet. So the weight of your arms pulling down on your shoulders. The rib cage just hanging slightly from the spine. And then embrace tiger, return to mountain. Again, if we feel that movement from the center of the body, the very act of extending upwards and outwards reinforces the rooting down. So the stillness and the movement are two elements of the same action. One more round. And rest. Lovely. Good. It's great. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for coming along.
Thank you.
I don't know, it's like where you are. We seem to have quite a nice day out there at the moment. So,
Yeah.
if you get a chance, go and enjoy some. But thanks again. So
Thank you.
Yes.
Bye.
see you soon. Bye bye.